Okay, hi everyone, good morning. Good morning. So happy to see you all again. I'm actually surprised that any of you are here. I was hoping nobody would come so I can go watch Fiddler on the Roof Judaism.
You're a big attraction, sorry.
But I'm kidding, I'm so happy you're all here. Okay, hi, welcome. Okay, I was wondering what the basic age range would be of this class. Exactly as I thought. You're a little young, but I'm happy you're here also. I'm going to talk to you too, don't worry. But because they called this class, it's hard raising parents, older parents, while still raising your kids, okay? So we're going to be trying to cover as many of those topics as possible. There's so much to say, we'll see how much time we have. And I'm glad we're doing this in the morning. Everybody's fresh. You all had your coffee? We're good? Okay, ready for a new day? Who did Zumba last night? You went on the treadmill? You did Zumba? So everybody got all your pent-up energy out from over Shabbos, ready for a new week? Okay. So here's the thing. I recently turned 30. 17 years ago, okay? Yeah, right? Pretty recent. Who's counting? Yeah, I'm officially at the age where I started needing glasses to read. So I had to make the very difficult decision to stop reading. Because who wants to face that? I mean, I'm not saying I'm old, but if I were whiskey, I'd be expensive. Talk about aging, right? Here's the thing about aging. There is a positive side. There is a positive side about aging. When we are younger, we learn a very, very juvenile way of life. We learn a juvenile understanding about life, a juvenile understanding about God, about religion, about so many other areas in life. And sometimes we take that with us as we get older, right? I know a lot of people who go to Hebrew school when they're younger. They're 45 years old, and I ask them to, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's not affecting anything. I ask them, what do you know about Sukkot? And they tell me, they start singing the song they learned about the hammer and the nails and I'm like, is that all? Yeah, that's what I learned about Sukkot, And we sometimes stay on this juvenile level of understanding of our Judaism. And I'll give you a few examples, okay? For example, have you ever learned about why we say a bracha before we eat or drink, a blessing? What's the reason?
Thank God for the food.
Okay, so some of us have learned that you thank God for the food, and many people have learned if you don't say a bracha, you are stealing from God, right? A lot of people learned that also. You have to say a bracha or else you're stealing from God, right? Which is not a very sophisticated understanding of what a bracha really is, right? Really, we say a bracha because if you paid attention to what I spoke about Friday night, this whole idea of elevating the physical to the spiritual, that's why we say a bracha. You take an apple, that's why you take an apple and you help the apple be elevated and reach its purpose in this world. You say a bracha and you take a bite into the apple, right? That's why we say a bracha, because we're elevating everything to a level that God wanted it to be in this world, right? To elevate it to that level. So there's much more sophisticated reasons. What did you learn about Shabbat? Shabbat is a day of rest, right? How many people, especially when you have young kids or if you have a house full of guests, who rests on Shabbat? Who rests? What? I mean, most of us don't rest on Shabbat. What does that mean? It's a day of rest. And I've had people complain to me and say, I don't understand. Shabbat is a day of rest. I never get to sleep. This is not how I'm supposed to be on Shabbat. I need to rest. I'm so exhausted. It's not about a physical rest. I mean, it would be nice. There is a concept of oneg Shabbat, having pleasures on Shabbat, and part of that is napping. But it's not about a day of rest. It's a day where God rested from creation. So therefore, we stop creating so that we can be closer to our Creator. Right? It's a day where we stop doing and we start being. That's what it means to rest. So this is what we need to understand. When we're young, we have a very juvenile understanding of life, of the world, of Judaism, of a relationship with God. How many people, when they're younger, they picture God as this scary man in the sky wagging his finger, right? Oh, you did something wrong, you're going to be punished. That's not what God is all about. And as we get older, we have an opportunity to develop more of a relationship with a loving God as opposed to a fearful God or an angry God. So that's the positive thing about aging. As we get older, we develop a more sophisticated understanding of life. And but here's the thing, okay? Wisdom does not necessarily come with age. All right? Sometimes age shows up all by itself, without the wisdom. And an example of that would be, you're good? Okay. Have you ever watched any of the Real Housewives of Anywhere? Okay. Does wisdom always come with age? No. Okay? We don't just become wiser and learn more about life and relationships just because we're older. It is a conscious decision we have to make, but we have the opportunity to be more of that every year that we get older. So there's something very, very, very positive about aging. So my friends, don't let aging get you down, because you can never get back up. All right, come, welcome, have a seat.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, good morning. Okay, so let's talk about change. Change is hard. As we change and we get through different stages of life, change is hard. Nobody likes change. You know, there was a study done a while ago where the results of the study were mind-blowing. More people were afraid of making a major change in their life than they were of death. Isn't that crazy? More of death.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but that was the result of the study. It was done here in the US. But you know what? It makes sense to me. Because when you make a major change in life, you have to experience the transition that comes with the change. And it's really hard. When you change something in life, something significant, something important, and even sometimes something small, what's happening is you are letting go of another part of yourself. You're letting go of something from your past when you have to change something in your future. And the truth is, that's almost like a death to the old you. It's almost like death to your old story. But the difference is, it's a death. Hi. It's a death that you're living through. Right? What's actual death? It's a transition you experience, but you don't feel it. You don't have to feel the transition. So isn't that fascinating? More people are afraid of change in life because you feel that death of the old you, but in actual death, you don't have to feel the transition. That's how difficult transitioning is for people. Right? It's something really, really hard. People struggle a lot. Now, I'm sure you've all gone through major changes in your life. I have. Was any of you, I don't think any of you were in my class yesterday when I spoke about, no, none of you were there, I don't think. And I shared my story, a lot of my journey of my own personal changes, where I grew up, all the places I lived in, and how much I connected with Avram Avinu, with Abraham, from the parsha of last week and this week, when he was told, Lech Lecha, he had to leave his whole past behind, and he had to move to his future. And I experienced the same thing. I had to leave. First I left New York and moved to Israel. Then I left Israel and I moved to Mexico. I moved to a new country, left my whole culture. I left all my Ashkenazi customs, had adopted all the Sephardic customs, all the details of everything, even my way of praying, my way of eating, my way of, even little details like I went from Good Shabbos to Shabbat Shalom, which sounds weird. It sounds like, okay, come on, not a big deal. Every little change was letting go of another part of who I was, another part of my past, right?
Actually, I heard you in Connecticut.
That's right. You heard me in Connecticut, and I shared my story there also.
You are great.
Thank you.
Unstoppable.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I shared my story there in detail, which we don't have time to get into now because it's not really our topic. But it's this idea of transition where we sometimes have to let go of things from the past that are so hard when we move into the future. And this really happens throughout our lives in so many different stages. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how to grow through those stages and how to grow through middle age. There's something called a midlife crisis. Right? What's a midlife crisis? It's a crisis that happens when you reach a certain stage in life, when you realize the transitions have to be so much bigger than they were. And all of a sudden, these transitions sometimes were just happening without your consent, and suddenly you're left lost, and you're saying, who am I now? Who am I now? Who am I supposed to be now? What was my identity? I had a certain identity that might not be working for me anymore. It's no longer my identity. I need to create a new identity now? And who am I? And we get so lost that people really have like an emotional break and a mental break, and people don't know how to deal with the transitions of life. Now, we're going to talk about the idea of growing through every stage in life, which is how we don't end up in midlife crises. And we don't end up going through these crazy moments when we have to transition because there's no choice. It's what life is bringing us, and we just got to do it. So the moment, the time in our life that is the actual transition, when are we officially over the hill? 40. We all know that, right? 40, you're over the hill. What does that actually mean? To be 40, right? And people are nervous. Were you nervous to turn 40? Many people are nervous to turn 40. You weren't?
No.
Good for you.
I was definitely nervous.
You were nervous to turn 40, right? Okay, yeah. We're talking to you in this room now. Okay? You're not 40 yet, but you're getting there. You do feel nervous?
I'm not sure. Maybe I am now.
Maybe you are now, right? I wasn't that nervous, but I know many people are. Okay? Hi, welcome. I didn't even think of aging. It didn't even cross my mind until I was 35, and I'll tell you what happened. I went to give a lecture somewhere. I remember I was in Baltimore. I remember exactly where I was, and I was giving a lecture, and then after the lecture, we had a little session where people can come over and ask me questions about that lecture. So I had a bunch of people sitting around the table, and I was talking and questions and answers, and one woman said to me, I didn't know who she was then, but now I know her, now we're friends. She said to me, she looked at me while I'm talking, totally off topic at all, it wasn't about the age or anything. She looked at me and she said, how old are you? I said, I'm 35. She's about 5 years younger than me. I said, I'm 35. She goes, wow, I hope to look as good as you do when I'm 35. And I was like, am I not supposed to look good at 35? I remember being so taken aback. And I said, what do you mean? How are you supposed to look at 35? She said, you don't have any wrinkles. Do you know that from that day on, when I looked in the mirror, all I saw was my wrinkles. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to have wrinkles at 35. Like, all of a sudden, it opened up my eyes to like, oh, I'm getting older. It was such a weird moment for me, And so it hits us all at different stages. It hits us all at different times. But one morning, we wake up and we look in the mirror and we're like, why is my mother staring back at me? Right? That's what happens to all of us. So 40, I would say, is that stage where we usually feel like we're getting there, we're getting old. So I want to talk about 40 from a Torah perspective. What is the number 40? When we learn about 40 in the Torah, we're going to go through some examples of the number 40 that we experience in the Torah, and I would love to hear from you what you know about 40. 40 symbolizes transition, okay? What are some of the 40s that we have in the Torah? We have the flood, 40 days of the flood, 40 days and nights. What else is 40? 40 years in the desert. What else do we have? We had 40 days where Moshe went up to heaven to receive the Torah. Right? Those were also 40 days. We have, and then in life, not only in the Torah itself, but in life in general, we have 40 days gestation for the embryo, right? 40 days gestation, and then 40 weeks of pregnancy, which is incredible. All of these 40s, not only that, we have 40 days from the first day of Elul, Rosh Chodesh of the Jewish month Elul, until the day of Yom Kippur. 40 days, those are all days of transformation. Those are days that we're supposed to be transitioning ourselves into greater people, into better people. Every single one of these things, every time we see the number 40, it's about transformation. It's about transition of some sort. And there are more things too, right? If you sit here and think, you'll think of more things. So we understand that the number 40 in Judaism is a very, very significant number. It's not something to be afraid of, it's actually something to embrace, because we are in this world to transition into the people that we were meant to be. That's why are we alive? Why are we living in the first place? There's someone that we need to become. Why were we given all these years? Because every year is an opportunity to get there. And what happens is when some people who are very depressed around their birthdays. We don't talk about my birthday. How old are you? I don't talk about my age, right? We don't like to another year, or sometimes even just any type of life cycle, right? Oh, it's this holiday again, it's that holiday again. When we live our life in just a cycle, and when life is just kind of a circle where it comes around again and again and again, another birthday, another holiday, another this, another that, just another year, that's what leads a person into depression. It leads a person into a rut where we just we remain dormant in life and there's just no movement. when we live our lives, yes, the year goes around, and the birthday comes around, and the holiday comes around, but we're not living in a circle, we're living in a spiral. Because every time it comes around again, we are on one level higher than we were the year before. That's how a person is able to embrace these transitions and changes. Every year I'm learning from who I was last year to see who I can be this year, right? I'm living my life in a spiral, and that's what keeps us focused on the future and keeps us in a positive space to be able to go through each year again and again. So I want to talk about this fear that we have of changing. So there is a thing that I like to call the dance of dysfunction. What do I mean by the dance of dysfunction? So I once had a toilet in my house, okay, one of my bathrooms. Do you remember when I told this story in Connecticut? I told the story. You're just laughing already before it happens. Okay. So I had this toilet in my house that it didn't flush. The only way to flush it was you had to pick up the lid, and you had to pull the string, and you had to push the button, and you had to, and then the toilet flushed, okay? Most guests didn't use that bathroom, but sometimes they did. And one time I had somebody who used that bathroom. And she called to me, I was in the kitchen, and she called to me from the bathroom. She said, "Yaffa, your toilet isn't flushing." I said, "What?" She goes, "Your toilet doesn't flush." I was like, "Oh, right, no worries. You just have to lift up the lid, and you pull the string, and you push the button, and you pull the other thing, and the toilet flushes, and no problem at all." And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, you just lift up the lid, you pull the string, you push the button." She goes, "Okay." And she came back out of the bathroom a few minutes later, and she came over to me, she said, "Is that always how you flush that toilet?" I was like, "Oh yeah, for years already, that's just how we flush the toilet." Like, I forgot about it. That's just how we flush. She said, "You realize you have to get that fixed, right?" I said, "Oh yeah, I totally meant to put up a sign by the toilet that says, lift lid, pull string, push button." I was gonna laminate the sign, I was gonna make it beautiful and, user-friendly. I forgot to do it, I'm sorry. She goes, no, that's not what I mean by fixing it. You have to get that fixed. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I got used to the toilet not flushing. We just got used to it. It didn't even cross my mind that it's something I need to fix. And that's what I like to call the dance of dysfunction. Sometimes we have things in our lives that are so dysfunctional, they're really not working the way they should be working, whether it's a toilet, whether it's something else, my brother just came to us for Sukkot. And he asked me, he's like, "Do you mind if I set the time on your microwave?" I was like, "Oh, there's a clock on my microwave?" He's like, "It's been blinking 000 like since I got here." I never even noticed. It was blinking. I just didn't pay attention to it. I was like, "Of course, set the clock." Like, he noticed it. I was just dancing around that dysfunction. I got used to the blinking clock on the microwave. I just never noticed it.
It would drive me batty.
I just, you know what? It's in the corner of my kitchen. It was a very, very dim light. I moved into this house a year ago, and it's a very, very old house. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be repaired, and not the toilet. The toilet was my own responsibility in a different house that I lived in. That was a different story. But this house, there's still so many things that need to be fixed, they need to be worked on, and I'm just kind of slowly but surely trying to do everything. I just never even noticed it. But still, it was this dance of dysfunction where we get used to, I probably noticed it right away, and I just got used to it, and I never noticed it again, right? So I think we do that in our relationships too sometimes. There are things in our relationships that aren't working. They're just not serving us. But we dance around the dysfunction, and we dance and we dance and we dance. Sometimes we're afraid to face the things that we need to change. We're afraid to look them in the eye and said, "You don't work, I need to," or not that you don't work as a person, you situation don't work, I need to fix it. Right? Don't tell a person, "You don't work, I need to fix you." Okay? No. I need to fix this situation. I got used to it, right? But it's not working. So that's what I like. That's what I call the dance of dysfunction. Now, like it or not, things in our lives are changing sometimes. Sometimes we have to make those changes, and sometimes they change on their own. How many people here, and I'm talking to anyone here over the age of 35, so for a minute, this is not about you for a minute. Who's 35? Okay. I see everyone reluctantly admitting. Anyone over the age of 35, do you still have the same body that you had in high school?
No, yeah, right. I really wish.
Right? Everyone says the body changes. Why didn't it get better? Why does change could be better, right? No. We don't have the same bodies we had in high school. They change. And we didn't ask for them to change. They change on their own. It's part of life. Our bodies are changing. Sometimes I want to move to Mars just so I can avoid gravity. I'm like, everything stay where you are. Stop moving that much, right? Things change. And I remember when I was in my 20s, okay, and I used to walk past, let's say a construction site, right, and the workers would whistle at me, and I'd be like, ew, don't whistle at me. In my 40s, I walk past a construction site, they whistle, and I'm like, I still got it, right? Yeah, thanks, right? Because it changes. It changes. And we have to embrace the changes and go along with those changes. We can't fight them. Now, here's the thing. Just like our bodies are changing physically, we need to make sure that the rest of ourselves, the other dimensions of ourselves, are changing along with our bodies. And those things don't change on their own. And what do I mean by that? We have another dimension that's not physical, that's the emotional part of ourselves. Are we also evolving emotionally, or are we only evolving physically? And what do I mean by that? Now I'm in my 40s, okay? 20 years ago, I was in my 20s. Maybe I had certain reactions and certain responses to things when I was in my 20s. Maybe there were certain people who grated on my nerves, and I had pet peeves, and I would get angry or frustrated or upset at certain things in my 20s. Should I still be getting upset at those same things when I'm in my 40s?
No.
I should have moved past that by now, right? I should develop new pet peeves in my 40s, right? We should move past that already, right? If we find that we're still struggling with the same emotional responses in our 40s and 50s, that's the moment where we stop and we say, have I evolved enough emotionally? We're in this world to evolve, and our bodies are showing us that things do change and are supposed to change. We need to make sure that the emotions are changing as well, and that we're not the same reactive as we were 20 years ago. And we learn how to be more responsive and less reactive. Not only that, we have another dimension, that's the spiritual dimension. Am I evolving spiritually? Am I doing the same amount of mitzvot in my 40s as I was doing in my 20s? I should be doing so many more by now. Or at least I should be doing them with much more intention by now. But if I am living my life Jewishly the same way in my 40s as I did in my 20s, I'm not evolving. And that's what I'm here for, to constantly evolve, to live life on that spiral every single year. And that is what's so important about getting older and about transitioning through life, to understand the importance of creating those transitions. Now, the power of 40, I'm going to talk about it now in conjunction with a segula. You know what a segula is? A segula, we all heard this word, we like to throw it around. We say, segula, for this to happen, we're going to pray this, and we're going to pray that, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. Because a segula, it means that when you do something extra to achieve a certain result. Really what a segula is spiritual manipulation, right? We're kind of manipulating the spiritual cosmos to allow things to work out in the way that we want them to work out. And the truth is, sometimes they work. That's okay. We're not here to talk about segulas now. The idea of a segula, in my opinion, is really just a way to get us to connect more with God and not to depend on the segula itself, on that action itself, but to say, okay, now God, I am doing this specific action to impact a certain result, but really it's because I know you're the one who's going to be showering me with this blessing, right? It's a connection to God. But we're going to talk about the number 40 now in that area of growth. So there is a verse in the Talmud, in the Gemara, that says, I'm going to tell it to you in Hebrew. This might be familiar to some of you, and then I'm going to explain it in English. Mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal. Have you heard this before? What does this mean? Do you know what it means?
If you move your place, then you'll have better luck.
If you switch your place, then you'll have better luck.
It never works for me in the grocery line, I've got to say.
You try to change to a different aisle? On the road also, right? The cars on the right are going much quicker. You switch to the right lane, suddenly they're stuck. The on the left are going, you go back and forth. Whatever your lane is going to be the traffic lane. That's how it works, right? Same in the grocery store. So that doesn't work if you switch your place physically, apparently. But sometimes It works. Sometimes people make a major change in their life, which we said before is difficult. We don't like change. It's hard. But sometimes people say, I need this and this area of my life to change. Mazal means technically it means your luck, your fortune. It really means, I guess, the situation that you find yourself in life, right? The mazal, what's destined to be for you. Let's put it like that.
It's not just a physical thing. It's not like moving from one home to the other.
Well, okay, so
a spiritual thing?
So that's what we're going to get to now. We're going to take it to a deeper place, okay? So quite literally, what this verse means is if you change from one physical place to another physical place, you can change your mazal, which means you can change your destiny of what is in the cosmos ready to happen to you and for you, okay? So people make a major change. They say, I need this to happen. I'm going to move to a new home. I'm going to switch my kids to a different school. Maybe there'll be better mazal for my kids in another school. I'll get a new job. People make major changes and shifts in their life, anticipating a new outcome. But here's the thing. We know that this is most likely referring to something deeper than that. That's very, very surface level, and that's how most people understand it. I like to take it to a much deeper place. You want a new outcome? You want something to transition, something to change in your life? Mishaneh makom. You have to change the place that you're in. You got to change the emotional place that you're in. We got to make some changes. Am I still responding the same way in my 40s to situations as I was responding in my 20s? Did I make those emotional changes? Am I more tolerant of people? Am I less agitated by people? Am I making those changes emotionally? That's number one. Mishaneh makom, change your emotional space, mishaneh mazal, and change your outcome. Then we could take it to the next level. Mishaneh makom, am I in the same space spiritually as I was previously? Even just last year, I'm not even talking about 20 years ago. Just last year, am I still in the same spiritual place? Or have I risen? That is what this means. You want to change your mazal, you want a different outcome in life, something with your children, for them to have success somewhere, to be successful in your own life. Let's evaluate where we're standing emotionally and where we're standing spiritually. Okay? That's what this means, mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal. Now the reason I brought this in is because each of those four words, mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal, they each start with what letter? Mem. Now, Kabbalistically, what does the letter Mem, what numerical value does the letter Mem have? 40. You know that every letter of the alphabet correlates to a different number, Kabbalistically. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2. We get up to Mem, and it's 40. Isn't that amazing? And we have these 4 mems over here symbolizing transitions that have to take place in our lives in order for us to achieve the outcome that we want. Okay? So here's the thing. We realize that there are some things in life that change. We spoke about our body making these changes, and other things in life are also changing. Anybody here still wear the same clothing that you wore in high school? Right? And not that the fact that they don't fit you anymore, right? But just in terms of the fashion change, we don't have the same style, right? Actually, the only things that still fit me from high school are earrings. I'm not even going to say shoes because my shoe size changed, right? But so yeah, they don't fit us, but we have, but even fashion-wise, we don't wear the same style clothing anymore. Anyone here have the same hairstyle since high school? We changed our hairstyles, right? Everything changes. Fashion changes. Technology changes. Who still has the original cell phone? Anybody remember that antenna up to there, right? And the thick, huge phone that was heavier than the bag. And, and even, then we got to Blackberries. Who had a Blackberry? You remember those days? So Blackberries were super cool. We used to be able to use them in meetings. Nobody would see us typing because the buttons were lifted, so you knew where everything was. You could just type under the table. iPhones, you can't do that. iPhones, you got to pull it out, and people see you. So the adjustment to that too. There's adjustment, and we adjust with each piece of technology. As soon as we get used to it, it changes. Right? So we get used to it. There's a new update. Constantly, technology is constantly changes. The weather changes. The economy changes. Politics. They keep changing. Everything in the US today, nothing is the same way it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, everything changed. Don't you, sometimes I feel like I want to just unplug the US and reboot it. You know, like when you reboot things, it just starts like, just like a reset, right? And so we want to do that with life. I just wonder, don't you ever want to just unplug your marriage and reboot it, right? Just a complete reset, right? Unplug any area of life, reset it. We want to do that. We can through these transitions. We can take any, because we see things change. And the key to getting over the fear of change is recognizing the changes that are already happening in life that we just go with. We just go with them because they're happening, right? These changes that we just suggested. We go along with it. They're not that hard for us to change our styles. They're not that hard for us to change technology. We get used to it right away. We are making changes without even realizing that we're making those changes. So we struggle with change without realizing that it's not as hard as we thought it was because we're already making those changes. What are some reasons why we make changes sometimes? So sometimes, I'm not talking about the ones that I just mentioned. Some of them just happen naturally because, okay, it's not that bad. I'll change my hairstyle again because it's a new fashion, right? Okay, I'll change to the upgraded phone. But sometimes things are difficult, and we make changes when we realize there's no other option. For example, if someone in your family were to go, to the doctor and realize that they are deathly allergic to dairy, what kind of changes are you going to make in your home? Your whole kitchen is going to change. There will be no more dairy. That's it. Because there is no option. We have to make that change, right? What's going to happen if you have been shopping in a certain place your entire life, and all of a sudden they raise their prices to double and a new place opens around the corner and it's half the price? You're going to change your supermarket probably, right? Because even though you're used to everything there, now it's just more convenient to shop somewhere else. So sometimes we make changes based on convenience. We make changes based on no other option. We make changes sometimes based on new information. You thought this was the right path, and then you learned something that wasn't right about it. You've been using the same doctor your whole life, let's say, and all of a sudden he's being sued for malpractice. No matter how much you love that doctor, probably you can say, well, maybe it's time for a new doctor now, right? You'll make a change because you learned new information now, right? Those are the reasons we make changes. So understanding that when there's no choice, we make those changes without an issue, we have to allow ourselves to say, even when there is a choice, I could choose to make changes. I could choose to go along with what my life is offering me now, even though it's hard, even though getting older is hard, and my relationship with my children is changing, and my relationship with my parents is changing, and my relationship with my body is changing. It's funny because there are some examples that I wasn't going to bring in if we had men here, but I can bring in all these examples now because it's only women. But I've been through, over the past few years, a complete body change that took me very much by surprise from when I moved to Miami, which was 4 years ago. Okay? When I moved to Miami, this might be hard to believe, but I was super skinny. My whole life, always. I'm very, very, very thin. I moved to Miami, and all of a sudden, I think I was explaining a little bit of this to you on Shabbos, right? I moved to Miami, and all of a sudden, I started swelling. I started gaining a ton of weight. I started having very low energy. Everything started changing. I gained 70 pounds, 70, in 3 years in Miami without changing my diet, without changing anything, right? A little bit I changed. When I moved from California, and California, the weather is so beautiful. I used to go walking every single day outside. When I moved to Miami, it was very, very humid, and I stopped going on my walks. But you don't gain 70 pounds from not walking, as much. So I knew something was happening, and I was sweating profusely, and I was exhausted all the time. And it wasn't me. I'm a person who I never even thought of the word sleep. Like, to me, it was never even a question in my mind, like, oh, maybe you should go to sleep early tonight. Why? Why do I need extra sleep? Like, I had so much energy and I was all over the place. And this was a new me that I didn't recognize. These changes were happening. And I knew it was related to the climate. I'm very sensitive to the humidity. So I said, it has to be related to the humidity, but I didn't understand how. I didn't have enough knowledge to back up my intuition. So, and then I understood. I went to the doctor finally. In the beginning, I couldn't because I moved there right before COVID, and only essential doctor's appointment. That was very hard on my self-esteem when I learned I wasn't essential. Okay, but I finally did go and I did the whole panel blood work, came back with high cholesterol, high triglycerides, hemoglobin, pre-diabetic, and I'm like, are you for real? Literally, I can count on my fingers the amount of times I even had a cold before this in my life. Like, it was so weird to me, right? I shared some of this with you. And I realized, like, yes, there are things environmentally that are affecting all these changes in my body, but I said, you know what? I'm also approaching my mid-40s, and it could be a mixture of that as well. Because I kept telling I was fighting it. I kept saying, no, I'm healthy. I never had a cold. I never had any of this stuff. No one in my family has high cholesterol. No, this doesn't happen. This is the weirdest thing. And finally, at one point, I said to myself, I need to accept my reality. Who cares why this is happening? But this is what's happening to my body right now. And I need to accept it, and I need to adjust to my body. I can't fight it. I need to make my body my friend. Because my body was my enemy for a few years. I was like, no, what's wrong? What's happening? Why am I tired? Why am I sweating? Why don't my clothing fit? This is horrible. This is awful. And as soon as I accepted, I actually began to see some changes. I went to the right people. I experienced, Hashem sent me to the right messengers who were able to help me. That's why I was telling these people who were sitting at my table on Shabbat. They saw that I brought my own special food. I only eat my own. I'm very specific in what I eat. I have right here all my juices that I make, special juices, carry them with me. I have my cut up fruits wherever I go, because I have to make sure that I learned what my body needs, and I'm detoxing my liver and all these different things. And I already lost 30 pounds. The swelling went down in most of my body. And I'm really, I said, this is my new body. This is my new life. This is my new reality. And I need to make these changes. And everything changed for me once I accepted that. And I think it's important for us, so this affects us, some of us physically, some of us emotionally, some of us in other areas. For me, it was physical, right? So that's the important thing that we need to understand. Oh, your ride is leaving? Okay. It was so good to see you again.
So nice to see
Yeah,
you.
hopefully I'll see you next time, okay? At the next retreat.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, all right, so now let's talk about the transitions in our parenting, and we're gonna move further, okay? So now that we understand transitions and that we have to accept our realities, okay, and that transitioning is good, it is a part of life that we want and is a part of life that we embrace because that's what we're here in this world for, okay? Let's talk about transitioning in adult life and in our parenting. So here's the thing. I used to be a perfect parent, and then I had kids. Okay? Weren't we all? Don't we know exactly how we're going to raise our kids and what we're going to do and how they're going to be? I remember my sister used to always say, my kids will never have runny noses. Like, I will not have those kids with runny noses. Of course she had kids with runny noses, right? We have this image of who our kids are going to be and what we're going to be as parents, and then we have our kids. And you know what I call kids? Kids are an accident at birth. What do I mean by that? Because kids, you don't know who you're going to give birth to. You have no idea who that child is going to be. You don't know how they're going to come out, what their IQ level is going to be, their personality, their looks, their height, their hair color. You don't know anything about that child. And yet, if you ask an expectant mother, are you going to love your kid when they're born? What's the mother going to say? Of course, it's not even a question, right? Your face is like, obviously, right? And then if you say to that mother, yeah, but what if your kid turns out to be a brat like the neighbor's kid? You still gonna love your kid? Of course I'm gonna love, I already love my kid. And I didn't even meet them. And then a few years later, I get phone calls. Yaffa, I don't know what to do. I don't love my child. And of course I say to them, I explain to them and I give them some examples of how they do love their child. And they realize, oh yeah, I do love my child. So then what am I feeling? I say to them, you love your child, but maybe you don't like your child. That's okay. You didn't choose this child, right? You didn't know what their personality was going to be. You had no idea who they were going to be, who they were going to become. And sometimes, why don't we like our children? Sometimes it's because they're so similar to us that all the things we don't like about ourselves, we see in them. Sometimes they're so similar to our husbands that all the things we don't like about him, we see in them. And sometimes it's a total personality clash. They're nothing like us, and we don't know how to deal with them. I had a child like that. I have a child like that, but Baruch Hashem, I say had, because now we're very, very close. But it took me 5 years of her life, at least, to learn her. She's so different than me. I had no idea who she was and how to deal with her and how to talk to her and what she needs. Everything I said was wrong. She was a little kid. And she had reactions to things I said. And I was like, who is this? I wouldn't have reacted like that. Who is this kid? And it took me a few years to really learn her, right? Because sometimes we have these children that are such a big clash to who we are. And we think we don't love them. We love them. We might not like them. We need to learn how to like them. We need to learn who they are. We have what's called trigger children. And we could all have, sometimes we have that one child that's the trigger child. Sometimes we have certain things in each child that can trigger us, and that's okay, we're human beings. But in each child and in each stage, we learn how to deal with them. That's how we evolve as parents. And here's the thing, parenting is so difficult and so complicated because just when we get it down, we're like, I got this infant. I know exactly what this infant needs from me. All of a sudden, what happens? They're not an infant anymore. Now they're a toddler. I don't know how to deal with this toddler. And now we got to learn how to deal with the toddler. And now we got it. And we're so proud of ourselves, right? I know how to deal with this kid. And then elementary school, and then middle school, and then teenager. And it just goes on and on and on. And you know, it starts right away in the beginning with all these debates of who's a better mother, what's the best thing for my child, and we have all these like debates about nothing, okay? Natural birth versus epidural, right? If you're a better mother if you do it natural, you're a better mother if you use and it's like these like arguments. Who cares? Who cares, right? And then there's the breastfed baby versus the formula baby, right? Which one's better? Now, I didn't use formula because I didn't want my kids to end up in community college, right? Obviously, that's what's going to happen to them, right? We have these ridiculous assumptions. No, this is better for your child. That's better for your child. The pacifier. The pacifier. I gave my oldest child a pacifier, okay? Who knew that was a problem? She had it till she was 3, okay? And, you know, 20 years later, sure, she can't say her S's, but she says the other 25 letters perfectly, and we're so proud of her. No, nothing happens from a pacifier, right? But we have these debates back and forth, good mom, bad mom. It's ridiculous. It makes parenting so much harder when everything, you know, is such a big deal. All of these trivial things are really not a big deal. None of them matter. Every stage, there's a new thing to learn. Every stage, there's this new, complicated, Here's the thing, okay? I am not the perfect parent. You are not the perfect parent, but we all know the perfect parent. And if we tap into the Torah and we see how Hashem guides us and leads us, then we know how to guide and lead our children at every single stage, no matter what they're going through, no matter what the stage is. And what does that mean? It means that every single thing we say to our children will mean nothing as much as everything we do and our children watch us doing. Our children learn so much more by what we do than by what we say. We can preach to our children on a regular basis about honesty, how important it is to be honest, always be honest, always be honest, always be honest. And then we go to Disneyland and we're waiting online for our tickets, and there's a much cheaper ticket for under 12 and much more expensive once you're 12. And the 12-year-old little girl sees her father say, and this one over here is 11. And she says, no, Daddy, I'm 12. And he says, shh, today you're 11. What is she going to learn?
To lie.
He preached to her about honesty her whole life, but he showed her that honesty isn't important. And these are the most valuable lessons that we can teach our children. Every single thing that we say, they watch everything, they listen to everything, they remember everything, and then they repeat everything. That's how it works. So as long as we are instilling these values into our children at every stage, right, that's what's going to last with them. Not the little tiny details, pacifier, bottle, who cares? None of those things are important. Okay, they're watching and listening to everything. Now, for those of you who are listening to this and thinking, my kids are already grown up, it's too late for me. Right? My kids are grown up, it's too late. So here's the thing. You're right, it's too late. I'm kidding. It's never too late. It's never, ever too late. Because we transition from from raising children in an environment where we control them. We make decisions for them when they're young, right? And it's an environment of control, and we transition to an environment of influence. And that means at every single stage, and in a few minutes we're going to go through the 4 different stages of parenting very quickly. But when we get to an age where we become influencers for our children, that lasts forever. No matter how old our children are, they become adults, and then we have grandchildren, and we are still influencers of everybody. It is never, ever too late. Starting today, we could still go home and be the greatest influences on our children. Okay? I just want to make sure we're not going overtime. What time does this class end?
10:30.
Oh, we have 5 minutes. Okay, we have 5 minutes. So we'll finish up quickly with this. All right, so I wanted to go through, I'm just going to quickly go through those transitions of the childhood, and then we'll end with the next level. Okay, so we have the discipline years, which is ages 0 to 5. Those are the discipline years, and that's when we take care of the child's primary needs, and that is really the age of control. Okay, then we have the training years, and this we're not going to get into. We can have an entire hour talking about all this, but we're just going through the stages. Then we have the training years, ages 5 to 12, and that where the child is gaining understanding. And that is the age where we start explaining the reasons behind things. In the younger age, we just tell them what to do. As they transition to ages 5 to 12, we start explaining why we're doing things. And this is really the essence of Judaism. The essence of Judaism is not about just telling people what to do this, do that, be that, wear this, wear that. It's to help them develop. Remember, we started in the beginning of the class. We started saying how when we're young, we have this juvenile understanding of Judaism. And people take that with them through their lives. And people take that with them in their parenting also. But as we get older, we have an opportunity to develop a more sophisticated understanding of Judaism. Really, the deeper meaning of why we do the things we do. And this is the age to start teaching our children. They don't have to wait till they're adults. Age 5 to 12, that's when we start telling them about the whys behind the whats. Right? And start teaching them that level of sophistication. Then we have ages 12 to 18, which is what I like to call the coaching years. This is the child's primary needs during those years are loving guidance. Okay? We try guiding them. We no longer control them. We guide them into making the right decisions and to making the right choices in life. And then we have number 4, which is the friendship years, the adult years, where the child's primary need during those years is space. That's really what they need, right? And we're there as their friends, and we're there as their influencers forever, right? That's our role at that stage. Now, I just want to finish up very quickly because we only have a few minutes left. The thing is that as we get older, our parents are also getting older. And this is where we get to that stage of how do I transition from being the person who, well, we start off as the controller, we get into the influencer, by being that person who is in that role. This is an area of changing roles. Remember, we spoke of the different types of transition? Now we transition to a different role. Okay? I was the parent to my children, and now I have to be the parent to my parent. And that is really hard. Okay? And how do we get into that stage? Now, hopefully, and I give this bracha to everybody here, your parents are not going to be in tremendous need of help. Be'ezrat Hashem, mentally, cognitively, they should always be stable and aware and where they are, because it does get difficult in that stage. My father-in-law passed away a year ago, and he had severe dementia, and that was very, very, very difficult. My father had a physical illness for many years, and the difference between dealing with a parent with a physical illness and a mental illness, there are a lot of differences. But the first step that we need to know is what we said before, and I'm going to repeat it again now: acceptance of your new reality. It's hard for us to see our parents not being that strong parent that they used to be, not being that person that guided you, that person that influenced you, that person that you turned to for advice all the time. They might not be that person anymore. And it's really, really hard for us to accept that. But step number 1 is acceptance of the new reality and understanding this is the reality that Hashem put me in right now. And this is the reality that is best for me and is best for my parents. See, here's the thing. I'm going to finish up now. We spoke about how sometimes we get a child that we don't like. We get a child that accident at birth. We don't know who that kid's gonna be, right? And we learn how to, we love them naturally, but we learn how to like them, and we learn how to connect with them, and we learn how to really be close with them. So what we need to understand is that part of the way to accept that and do that is to know that that child was given to you on purpose. There was no mistake. God gave you that child because you are the absolute best mother for that child. And God gave that child you as a parent because you are the absolute best parent for that child. Because there is something that that child is here to teach you that you need to grow with and through. And there is something that that child needs to learn when they're with you. And the same thing goes for your parent. When you're in that phase now where we have to parent our parent, Hashem put them in that specific situation because there's something that they need from you, and there is something that you need to learn from them. Maybe we need to learn empathy. Maybe we need to learn patience. Maybe we need to learn compassion. And there is something that we need to learn, and that's why Hashem put us in that situation. So the first thing is acceptance and recognition that this is exactly the space that I'm supposed to be in. Hashem wants me to be here with this parent who needs this and this from me. The second thing is, we need to get as much support as we can. Okay? We need support just like you need support when you're raising young children. We need support from other mothers. We also need support from anyone else that we can delegate anything to. We cannot do everything and be the everything for that parent because we're going to burn out and that parent needs us. Okay? So we need to look to see what we can outsource and to see what we can delegate and who can support us in whatever way. So those are the important steps that we need to understand. One of them is a mindset, and one of them is a practical, physical shift in what we can do to make things easier for us. But the real thing that I want to make sure you remember, and we're going to end with this, it's a shame I wanted to share a story, but we don't have enough time for that. The main thing is to recognize that every single thing that we are doing for our children, that we are doing for our parents, all falls under one main mitzvah and midah, and that is what we call chesed. Chesed is loving kindness. When it's for our children, it's chesed to them. Sometimes we forget about that. We forget that it's an actual act of kindness. We run and we do chesed for the neighbors, for the community, for this, for that. It's in our own homes that we can be there for our children. And it's in our own homes that we can be there for our parents. But there's a next level also, and that is what we call hakarat hatov, which is the recognition of the good. When our children are younger, we have hakarat hatov to God for giving us these children. And when we take care of our parents, it's hakarat hatov, the recognition of the good to our parents for everything that they did for us. Now we have an opportunity to do for them. So that is the mindset that I wanted to leave you with when it comes to that, okay? That every single step, it's a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is, you cannot even imagine. The thing that hurt me the most when I lost my father was the fact that I will never have an opportunity to honor my father again. That to me was so painful, that now I don't have that chance anymore, right? But when your parents are alive, every single second we have an opportunity to be there for them, and the reward is tremendous. The reward in this world and the reward in next world. Thank you so much for being here with me today.